But what caused the financial success was not extreme ability. You know, I have a good mind, but I'm way short of prodigy. And I've had results in life that are prodigious. And that came from tricks. I just learned a few basic tricks from people like my grandfather.
What were those tricks?
What kind of... Now everybody's leaning in, wanting to know.
It's too late for you old guys. There are all kinds of tricks that I just got into by accident in life. One, I invert all the time. And I was a weather forecaster when I was in the Air Corps. And how did I handle my new assignment? Being a weather forecaster in the Air Corps is a lot like being a doctor that reads x-rays. It's a pretty solitary. Yeah. You're in the hangar in the middle of the night and drawing weather maps and you're clearing pilots, but you're not interfacing with a bunch of your fellow men very much. And so I figured out the minute I was actually making weather forecasts for real pilots, I said, how can I kill these pilots? Now, that's not the question that most people would ask, but I want to know what the easiest way to kill them would be so I could avoid it. And so I thought it through in reverse that way, and I finally figured out, I said, there are only two ways I'm ever going to, I was in the ferry command, there are only two ways I'm going to kill a pilot. He said, I'm going to get him to icing his plane can't handle, and that will kill him. Or I'm going to get him someplace where he's going to run out of gas before he can land because all the airports are sucked in. And I just was fanatic about avoiding those two hazards. And if Kobe Bryant had had somebody like me, he'd still be with us. Yeah, it was so stupid to kill yourself that way. But just that basic, I may have learned that from my grandfather. My grandfather would say to me when I'm swimming, he'd say, swim as long as you want, but stay near the shore. Well, but you can laugh, but no, he was a very wise man.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what I'm hearing you say is that you, as a discipline, look at what the risk is on the other side of the situation and you avoid that. That's one of the rules, right?
Well, it's just that it's like a lot of practical problems in algebra. If you invert, you can solve it easily. If you don't, you can't solve it easily.
Exactly right.
And so, of course, I had that trick very early. And most people, they say, how can you, please tell us what you do to save India or to help India. And of course, I would approach it differently. I'd say, what could I do which would most easily hurt India? And approaching it in reverse that way, I got better results.
You look at the vulnerabilities.
Yeah, yes, and I have a whole bag of tricks like that. I went to the ROTC, both in high school and college. And the ROTC taught me to fire mortar shells or artillery shells, one shot over, one shot short, and then kapow. Well, I never shot any damn shells, but I've been using that mental trick all my life. That's how I determine what size to make something. Over and under and kapow. And so I just got a bag of tricks. And I got the right bag of tricks early. And of course, it's been of enormous help to me. Let me give you an example. I had a client once when I was a young lawyer, and he owned a bunch of hilly ranch land on the edge of civilization, not very far from here in Southern California. And the Edison Company came through and they wanted a new easement through his land. They already had some easements. And he hired the leading appraiser in Orange County, real estate appraiser, and said, and he had the idea that he should have $250,000 for this easement from the Edison Company. And this leading appraiser, who was very pompous and very old and very distinguished, and he told him, no, I'm sorry, it's only $125,000 value in your damn ranch. And so he came to me and said, Charlie, can you talk some sense into this elderly appraiser? And so I looked at his problem and I told the appraiser, what I thought how he was doing his own appraisal wrong. I'm not a real estate appraiser, he is. And what he had done is what he was taught to do in appraisal school. He thought the problem through in 2 dimensions, and he figured out from comparable sales what the value per acre was, and then he computed the acreage, and he had something a little bit on the damage the easement would do to the remaining property and so, but it was all done in 2 dimensions. And I said to this appraiser, you've got to do this in 3 dimensions. You know, God gave us 3 dimensions. And I said, if they put the utility towers, big transmission line towers, which is why it's going to freeze the grade. And the logical way to develop your land is to lop off the top of the hills and put them in the valley. That's the way hilly land is developed. And they're doing enormous damage to you by freezing the grade. And he said, he wouldn't change a damn thing. So I said to my elderly client, I think you have to fire this twit. And I will hire you an appraiser who can think. And so I got him $600,000, which wasn't at all hard because I was dealing with a bunch of honest engineers at the Edison who did think in 3 dimensions. But again, that's so simple, but you'd be surprised how many lawyers would screw that one up. And of course, the people like that appraiser who didn't know his own business very well because he didn't pay attention to the fundamentals, those people are always with us. And if you just have the mental trick of constantly going back to the basics, it's pretty basic insight that
Are you conscious?
the geometrical problem in a real world is 3-dimensional.
Are you conscious of the rules, or they're just there?
Well, it's so habitual with me.
Yeah, I understand.
And I revolve possibilities, and I rag problems hard. And if they don't yield, I come back. And so this is just a bag of tricks, and it enables a non-prodigious man to get prodigious results.
This question comes in from Steve, who says, what worries you most about our economy and the stock market? And on the other hand, what makes you optimistic?
Well, you have to be optimistic about the competency of our technical civilization. But there again, it's an interesting thing. If you take the last 100 years, 1922 to 2022, most of modernity came in that 100 years. And in the previous 100 years, that got another big chunk of modernity. And before that, things were pretty much the same for the previous thousands of years. Life was pretty brutal and short and limited and what have you. No printing press, no air conditioning, no modern medicine, no. I don't think we're going to get things that were in what I call the real human needs. Think of what it meant to get, say, first you got the steam engine, the steamship, the railroad, and a little bit of improvement in farming and a little bit of improvement in plumbing. That's what you got in the 100 years that ended in 1922. The next 100 years gave us widely distributed electricity, modern medicine, modern particles, the automobile, the airplane, the records, the movies, the air conditioning in the South. And think what a blessing it was. If you wanted 5 children, if you wanted 6 children, if you wanted 3 children, you had to have 6 because 3 died in infancy. That was our ancestors. Think of the agony of watching half your children die. It's amazing how much achievement there's been in civilization in these last 200 years, and most of it in the last 100 years. Now, the trouble with it is that the basic needs are pretty well filled. In the United States, the principal problem of the poor people is they're too fat. That is a very different place from what happened in the past. In the past, they were on the edge of starving. And And what happens is, it's really interesting, is with all this enormous increase in living standards and freedom and diminishment of racial inequities and all the huge progress that has come, people are less happy about the state of affairs than they were when things were way tougher. And that has a very simple explanation. The world is not driven by greed, it's driven by envy. And so the fact that everybody's 5 times better off than they used to be, they take it for granted. All they think about is somebody else having more now, and it's not fair that he should have it and they don't. That's the reason that God came down and told Moses that you couldn't envy your neighbor's wife or even his donkey. I mean, even the old Jews were having trouble with envy. And so it's built into the nature of things. It's weird for somebody my age, because I was in the middle of the Great Depression when the hardship was unbelievable. After all this great wealth and so forth, I can't change the fact that a lot of people are very unhappy and feel very abused after everything's improved by about 600%, because there's still somebody else who has more. I have conquered envy in my own life. I don't envy anybody. I don't give a damn what somebody else has. But other people are driven crazy by it. And other people play to the envy in order to advance their own political careers. And we have whole networks now that they want to pour gasoline on the flames of envy. So I like the people who are against envy, not the people who are trying to profit from it. But if you stop to think of the pretentious expenditures of the rich, who in the hell needs a Rolex watch so you can get mugged for it? You know, I mean, yet everybody wants to have a pretentious expenditure. And that helps drive demand in our modern capitalist society. My advice to the young people is don't go there. The hell with the pretentious expenditure. I don't think there's much happiness in it. But it does drive the civilization we actually have. Steve Pinker of Harvard is one of our smart modern academics. He constantly points out how everything's gotten way better. But the general feeling about how fair it is has gotten way more hostile. And as it gets better and better, people are less and less satisfied. That is weird, but that's what's happened.